You know those moments where you watch something happening and your brain just freezes? Because what you're seeing doesn't fit into any category you have for how the world works. I had one of those moments last fall, and it started because of a woman in a yellow raincoat. She had a map, the wrong map, and she was about to make a mistake that would turn 40 people into silent witnesses of something I still don't fully understand. Setup, it was one of those London afternoons that isn't quite rain and isn't quite sunshine. The kind where the sky looks tired, like it's been gray for too long and forgotten how to be blue. I was walking down Marlborough Road, heading towards St. James's Palace. Not the main tourist drag. No big gates, no famous balcony, no crowds with selfie sticks. Just a red brick Tudor facade that most people walk past without noticing. I'd lived in London for 6 years at that point. Long enough that I'd stopped seeing the royal palaces. They were just buildings, old buildings with nice chimneys. But that afternoon, I was killing time before meeting a friend near Green Park, and something made me take the long way. There was a small sentry post outside the palace. Not the ones you see in photos with the bearskin hats and the marching. This was a quieter spot. A single guard stood near a doorway. Still, silent. His uniform was dark gray, not the famous red. Not justa capítulo. He looked more like a statue than a person. Hands at his sides. Eyes forward. Not moving. I've seen enough guards to know they're real. But something about this one felt different. He was older than most. Maybe late 30s. His face had lines around the eyes that said he'd been standing still for a very long time. Not just today, but across years. His jaw was set. His breathing was so shallow I couldn't see his chest move. A group of Japanese tourists walked past, took photos of the building, and left. 2 women with prams stopped to tie a shoelace, then moved on. Nobody looked at him for more than a second. That was the thing. He was invisible, just part of the furniture. Build tension, I leaned against a lamppost about 15 meters away. I wasn't planning to stay. I just needed to check a message. But then I noticed a woman approaching from the direction of Green Park. Mid-50s. Bright yellow raincoat, the kind you buy at a gift shop when you forgot to pack one. She was holding a map that had been folded and refolded so many times the creases were turning into holes. She was alone, and she looked lost. Not the casual lost of someone who knows they'll figure it out. The real lost. The kind where your shoulders are up near your ears, and you're turning your head too fast, hoping something will look familiar. She stopped about 10 feet from the guard. Looked at the palace, looked at her map, looked back at the palace. Then her eyes landed on him, and she smiled. It wasn't a confused smile. It wasn't a curious smile. It was the smile of someone who has just solved a problem. She'd figured something out. She walked right up to him, not close enough to touch, but close, about an arm's length away. She tilted her head, studied his face. Then she laughed, a small, relieved laugh, like she'd caught onto a joke nobody else understood. "Oh," she said. Her accent was American. Midwest, maybe. "Oh, that's clever." She turned around and looked at the palace again. Then back at him. Then she reached out and tapped his sleeve. I swear to you, my stomach dropped. She tapped his sleeve, the fabric of his uniform. And he did not move, did not flinch, did not blink. "They make these so realistic now," she said. To herself, but loud enough that I could hear. The eyes. Look at the eyes. She was talking to him like he was a mannequin, like he was made of wax. And he stood there, perfectly still, his eyes fixed on some invisible point in the middle distance. His breathing still invisible. I realized what was happening. She thought he was a wax figure. One of those Madame Tussauds, things they sometimes put outside for photo opportunities. And here's the part one still think about late at night when I can't sleep. He did not correct her. He could have. A tiny cough, a blink that was too deliberate, a shift of weight from one foot to the other. He had 100 ways to tell her he was a living, breathing human being without breaking protocol. He chose none of them. Climax, she stepped even closer. Now she was really looking. At his hands, at the small veins on the back of his fingers, at the tiny scar above his left eyebrow. She was admiring the craftsmanship. She genuinely believed someone had sculpted this man out of wax and dressed him in a uniform. "Incredible," she whispered. The pores on the skin. You can see the pores. A man walked past with a briefcase. He glanced at her, glanced at the guard, and kept walking. He didn't care. Or maybe he'd seen this before. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to walk over and tell her. But another part of me, the part I'm not proud of, wanted to see what would happen. How long could he keep this up? How long could she stand there, inches from a real person, and not realize? She pulled out her phone, not to take a photo, to check something. She typed something into a search bar. I couldn't see the screen, but I watched her face change as she read. Confusion. Then surprise. Then a slow, creeping realization. Wait, she said. Wait, the Wax Museum is on Marylebone Road. This isn't. She looked up at the palace, looked at the guard, looked back at her phone, and then she looked at his eyes again. And he blinked. It was the smallest movement, the tiniest flutter of his eyelids. But she was close enough to see it. Her whole body went rigid. Her hand flew to her mouth. She made a sound, not a scream, not a gasp, something in between. A kind of choked squeak. "Oh my God," she said. "Oh my God, you're real." He did not respond. His eyes went back to that fixed point. His face was stone. She stumbled backward. 2 steps. 3. Her heel caught on a crack in the pavement, and she nearly fell. The map flew out of her hand and landed in a puddle. She didn't pick it up. She just stared at him, her face cycling through about 7 different emotions in 3 seconds. Embarrassment, horror, disbelief, relief that he hadn't shouted at her. Embarrassment again, worse this time. And then something I didn't expect. Wonder. She looked at him like she'd just seen a ghost. Like the line between what's real and what isn't had blurred right in front of her, and she couldn't find it again. Resolution, a young woman with a pushchair stopped. She'd seen the whole thing. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and we both did that thing where you pretend you're not watching, but you're absolutely watching. The guard still hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't acknowledged the woman at all. But here's the thing. He also hadn't broken character. He'd done exactly what he was trained to do. Stand still. Stay silent. Let the public be the public. The woman in the yellow raincoat finally bent down and picked up her map. It was dripping wet. She wiped it on her sleeve, which didn't help. Then she looked at the guard one more time. "I'm so sorry," she said. Her voice was small now. I thought you were..." "Nothing." She waited, like she expected him to suddenly laugh and say, "Just kidding." But he didn't. He was already gone again, back inside that private space where guards go when they're on duty. A place where they see everything and react to nothing. She walked away. Fussed. Head down. The woman with the pushchair gave me a look that said, "Can you believe that?" And I gave a look back that said, "I honestly don't know." But I stayed. I don't know why. I stayed for another 5 minutes, leaning against that lamppost, watching the guard. And after a while, I noticed something. The tiniest shift in his posture. Not a movement exactly. More like the suggestion of movement. His weight transferred from his right foot to his left. It took about 4 seconds. Slow enough that if you blinked, you'd miss it. And then, I swear this happened, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile. Not even close. Something smaller. Something private. He'd known the whole time. Of course he had. He'd seen her coming from 20 meters away. He'd watched her check her map. He'd watched her approach. And he made a choice. A silent, invisible choice to let her believe what she wanted to believe. To let her have her moment. Ending line, I walked away thinking about all the things we don't see. The people standing perfectly still in the background of our lives. The ones who could correct us but don't. And I wondered how many times I've been the woman in the yellow raincoat, touching something real and calling it wax while someone else just stood there and let me be wrong. Part 2 document ID. SCP/2024/LN02 title. A tourist mistakes him for a Royal Guard wax figure. And he does not correct them. Location: Windsor Castle, near the Lower Ward. Date: late March, a Thursday. Hook: here's what nobody tells you about standing still for a living. It's not the legs that give out first. It's the eyes. After 90 minutes of not blinking, your vision starts to white out at the edges. After 2 hours, you stop seeing individuals. You see shapes, colors, movement, and somewhere in that fog of exhaustion, you start to forget that you're a person at all, which is exactly when someone walks up to you and treats you like a piece of furniture. Set up Windsor Castle on a Thursday in March is a different world from Buckingham Palace. Fewer tour buses, more school groups, more old couples holding hands and walking slowly like they've got nowhere to be and they're glad about it. I was there because my niece was on a school trip from Manchester. I'd offered to meet her at the castle, buy her lunch, pretend I was a cool uncle. The usual. But her coach was late, so I found myself standing near the lower ward, watching the guards change. Or not change, actually. I'd missed the main event by about 20 minutes. Now there was just one guard standing outside a small wooden door. The kind of door that leads to somewhere boring. A storage room. An office. Nothing important. But the guard didn't know that. Or maybe he did. Either way, he stood like he was protecting the crown jewels themselves. He was young. Early 20s maybe. Still had that look that young soldiers get when they're trying very hard to look older. Clean-shaven. Broad shoulders. His bearskin hat sat perfectly level, like a black furry table on top of his head. His uniform was immaculate. And he was suffering. I could tell. Not because he moved. He didn't. But I've learned to see the small signs. The way his jaw muscles clenched and unclenched every few minutes. The way his fingers twitched inside his white gloves, invisible to anyone not looking closely. The way his eyes had that glazed, faraway look of someone who has been staring at the same patch of gravel for 90 minutes and has started to see patterns in it that aren't there. A group of German tourists walked past, speaking loudly, taking photos. The guard didn't react. A child threw a tantrum about ice cream about 50 meters away. The guard didn't react. A pigeon landed on his bearskin hat. I'm not joking. A pigeon landed right on top of the hat. Sat there for a good 10 seconds. The guard did not move. The pigeon eventually got bored and flew away. The guard still did not move. That's when I noticed the man. Build tension, he was British. Late 60s, maybe. Gray hair, neatly combed. A tweed jacket that had seen better days, but was holding on stubbornly. He was carrying a plastic bag from a pharmacy and walking with the careful, slightly tilted gait of someone whose hip hurts, but won't admit it. He stopped about 6 feet from the guard. Looked at him. Looked at the door behind him. Looked at his watch. Then he did something strange. He walked in a slow circle around the guard. Not close. Maybe 2 meters away. But he circled him like you'd circle a statue in a museum. Looking from every angle. Studying the uniform. The boots. The way the gloves fit. I thought he was just an old guy who appreciated military history. Maybe he'd been a soldier himself. Maybe he was remembering something. Then he stepped closer, right up to the guard's side, and he reached out and poked him in the ribs with one finger. I stopped breathing. The guard didn't move. The old man stepped back, nodded, like he confirmed something he already suspected. Remarkable, he said. His voice was dry, accent from somewhere in the home counties. The texture of the fabric. You can't replicate that with synthetics. He pulled out his phone, not a smartphone. One of those old Nokia bricks that still work after being dropped downstairs. He typed something with his thumbs, slowly, like each letter was a small effort. Then, he looked at the guard again. Closer this time. He was examining the face, the eyebrows, the tiny scar on the chin that I hadn't noticed before. The skin is slightly too warm, he muttered. But the eyes are perfect. He thought the guard was a wax figure. I looked around. There were maybe 20 other people in the vicinity. A family eating sandwiches on a bench. A jogger stretching against a wall. 2 teenage girls taking selfies with the castle behind them. Nobody was watching the old man. Nobody was watching the guard. Nobody except me. Climax, the old man reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. A pound coin. He held it up between his thumb and forefinger, the way you hold a coin when you're about to flip it. And then he tried to stick it into the guard's ear. I'm serious. He tried to put a coin in the guard's ear, like the guard was a vending machine, like there was a slot hidden somewhere behind the bearskin hat. The coin touched the guard's ear. The metal edge pressed against the cartilage, and the guard did not move. But something happened, something I almost missed. The guard's eyes shifted, just a fraction, just a tiny movement of his pupils. He was looking at the old man now, not at the middle distance, At him. Directly at him. The old man didn't notice. He was too focused on trying to find a coin slot that didn't exist. He said. Maybe the ear isn't the access point. Sometimes they hide the mechanism in the collar. He pulled the coin back, stepped around to face the guard head-on, leaned in close. So close their noses were about 4 inches apart. And the guard blinked. Not a slow blink. A deliberate blink. The kind of blink that says, I am a living creature and you are invading my personal space. The old man froze. His hand stopped mid-reach. His mouth opened slightly. He stared into the guard's eyes, and the guard stared back. For 5 seconds, neither of them moved. Then, the old man did something I will never forget. He smiled, a slow, spreading smile that started in his eyes and moved down to his mouth. He stepped back, put the coin back in his pocket, and nodded once, like he'd just been told a secret. Very good, he said. Very, very good. He walked away, not embarrassed, not apologetic, just satisfied, like he'd passed some kind of test, like the guard had played along with a joke that only the two of them understood. I watched the old man disappear around a corner, still carrying his pharmacy bag, still walking with that careful, tilted gait. And then I looked at the guard. He was still standing there, still motionless. But now there was something different about him, something almost imperceptible. His shoulders were slightly less rigid. His jaw was slightly less clenched. And, I swear to God, he was almost smiling. Resolution, my niece's coach, finally arrived. She ran up to me, all 9-year-old energy and missing tooth, and started telling me about the Roman ruins they'd seen on the way down. I nodded and said, that's great, and really, and all the things uncles are supposed to say. But my mind was still back there, with the guard and the old man and the pound coin. I found myself walking past the same spot on the way to lunch. The guard was still there. Same position, same stillness. But the sun had moved, and the shadows were different, and something about the light made him look less like a statue, and more like a person who was very, very tired. A woman walked up to him with a camera. She was about to take a photo. Then she paused, looked at his face, looked at his hands, looked back at his face. You're real, she said. Not a question, a statement. The guard did not respond. She put her camera down, smiled at him. Not a tourist smile, a human smile, the kind you give someone when you see them. Thank you, she said, and walked away. I don't know why she said thank you. Maybe for standing there so she could feel safe. Maybe for not being a wax figure after all. Maybe for something else entirely. But the words hung in the air like smoke, and the guard heard them. I know he did, because his left hand, the one at his side, opened and closed once. Slowly, like a wave, like a goodbye. Or maybe I imagined it. Ending line, I took my niece for fish and chips and watched her dip her fries in ketchup and tell me about the armor in the state apartments. And I thought about how we spend so much time looking for what's fake that we forget to notice what's real. About how a man in a uniform and a hat can stand in plain sight for hours and still be invisible. About how sometimes the most human thing you can do is let someone be wrong and smile about it later when nobody's watching. Part 3 Document ID SCP/2024/LON-03 Title. A tourist mistakes him for a Royal Guard wax figure, and he does not correct them. Location: Horse Guards Parade, Whitehall, London. Date: mid-July, a Friday afternoon. Hook. The thing about summer in London is that the city forgets how to breathe. The tube turns into a sauna. The pavements get sticky, and every tourist within 500 miles converges on the same 6 square blocks, all of them holding ice cream that melts faster than they can eat it. That's where I was last July, right in the middle of it. Horse Guards Parade, which is this wide open space between Whitehall and St. James's Park. Normally, it's just a big gravel courtyard with some archways and statues. But in July, it's a zoo. And right in the middle of that zoo, there's a guard on horseback. A cavalryman in a silver helmet and a red tunic, sitting on a massive black horse that looks like it was carved out of midnight. The horse doesn't move. The guard doesn't move. They stand there like a 2-part statue, and the crowds flow around them like water around a rock. That's where she found him. Set up her name, I found this out later because I couldn't stop thinking about her, was Lauren. She was 23. She'd flown in from Melbourne the night before. It was her first time outside Australia. She was jet-lagged, sunburned, and carrying a backpack that was too big for her frame. She'd been awake for 31 hours and was running on nothing but instant coffee and adrenaline. I know all this because after what happened, I sat next to her on a bench in St. James's Park, and she told me she needed to tell someone. And I was there, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I was at Horse Guard Parade because my train got canceled, and I had an hour to kill. I bought a sandwich from a Tesco Express and found a spot on the edge of the crowd, near one of the stone archways. I was people watching. It's my favorite thing to do in London. You see everything if you just stand still long enough. The mounted guard was doing his thing. The horse, a giant black creature named something like Sovereign or Majesty, stood perfectly still. Its tail swished occasionally to chase away flies. But otherwise, nothing. The guard sat in the saddle like he'd been born there. His back was straight. His face was blank. His left hand held the reins loosely, but not too loosely. His right hand rested on his thigh. Tourists took photos. Kids waved at the horse. A man in a business suit walked past without looking up from his phone. And then Lauren arrived. Build tension, she came stumbling out of the crowd like she'd been pushed. Her backpack swung sideways and nearly hit a woman with a pram. She muttered an apology that got lost in the noise. Her eyes were wide, darting everywhere, trying to take in everything at once. She stopped when she saw the mounted guard, froze, stared, and then she laughed. A loud, unrestrained laugh that cut through the crowd noise like a gull's cry. A few people turned to look at her. She didn't notice. "Oh, you gotta be kidding me," she said. Australian accent. Broad. Warm. They put a wax figure on a real horse. She walked closer. The crowd parted around her without meaning to. She had that quality that some people have, the inability to be ignored. Her red hair helped. It was the color of a fire extinguisher or a London bus. She circled the horse. The horse didn't react. Horses at horse guards are trained to ignore everything. Fireworks, car horns, loud Australians. Nothing phases them. "Look at the detail," she said. She was talking to no one, or everyone. "Look at his hands. You can see the veins. And the horse's eyes. They got that glassy look." She pulled out her phone and started filming, walking around the horse and guard in a slow circle, narrating like she was making a documentary. Day one in London, and I've already found the best attraction. Free wax museum. Right here. Nobody told me about this. A teenager nearby snorted. He knew the guard was real. He was about to say something, but his mother grabbed his arm and shook her head. "Let her have her moment," the mother's eyes said. The teenager rolled his eyes, but stayed quiet. Lauren stopped directly in front of the horse. She was close. Too close, probably. The horse's breath ruffled her hair. She didn't notice. "I'm going to touch it," she announced, "just to see if it's real." Climax, she reached out her hand toward the horse's nose. And the guard spoke. Not loudly. Not officially. He didn't shout, "Stand back," or "Do not touch the Queen's horse." He just leaned forward slightly in the saddle, tilted his head down toward her, and said 5 words. "I wouldn't do that, miss." His voice was low, calm, almost gentle, but it carried. It had that quality that military voices have, trained to be heard without being loud. It cut through the crowd, noise like a knife. Lauren's hand stopped 2 inches from the horse's nose. Her whole body locked up. Her eyes went wide. She turned her head slowly, like an owl, to look up at the guard's face. He was looking down at her. Not angry, not amused, just present. A real person, finally, acknowledging her existence. You're real," she whispered. "Yes, miss. But I thought you looked so still. I thought you were made of wax." "No, miss." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at her phone, still recording. Then back at him. Then at the crowd, which was now openly watching. Her face turned the same color as her hair. "Oh my God," she said. "Oh my God, I've been narrating. I've been narrating like you were a museum exhibit. Everyone heard me." "Yes, miss." "Stop saying yes, miss. It's making it worse." The guard's lips twitched. That same almost smile I'd seen on the other guard's face. a tiny crack in the armor. Would you prefer I say nothing, miss? She let out a noise that was half laugh, half groan. She covered her face with her hands. Her phone clattered to the gravel. She didn't pick it up. The horse shifted its weight. The guard adjusted the reins. The crowd went back to what they were doing because crowds have short attention spans, and there's always something else to look at. But Lauren stayed where she was, hands over her face, shoulders shaking, not crying, laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Resolution, the guard watched her for a moment. Then, he did something I'd never seen a royal guard do. He leaned down from the saddle, picked up her phone, and held it out to her. You dropped this, miss. She took it from him. Her fingers brushed his gloved hand. She looked up at his face. Really looked. Not at the uniform. Not at the helmet. At him. The person underneath. How long have you been sitting there? She asked. 3 hours, miss. 2 more to go. 3 hours without moving? We move, miss. Just slowly. Very slowly. She nodded. Processing. Then she stepped back. Gave him space. Gave a horse space. I'm sorry, she said. For the narration. For calling you a wax figure. For almost touching your horse. No apology necessary, miss. Happens all the time. Does it? He didn't answer. But something in his eyes said yes. More than you believe. She walked away then. Slowly. Not running. She kept looking back over her shoulder like she expected him to disappear. But he didn't. He was still there. Still sitting. Still watching. Still real. I found her 10 minutes later on a bench in St. James's Park. She was eating a Mr. Whippy ice cream and staring at the lake. I sat down next to her. Not too close. Just close enough to talk. That was you, I said. At Horse Guards. She looked at me. Assessed. Decided I wasn't a threat. Yeah, she said. That was me. Making a fool of myself in front of about 100 people. He didn't seem to mind. No, she said. He didn't. That's the weird part. He could have yelled at me. Could have told me to back off. Instead, he just let me be an idiot. And then he was nice about it. She licked her ice cream. Watched a duck paddle past. You know what I think? She said. I think he was bored. 3 hours on a horse, not talking to anyone. And then I show up and give him a story. Something to laugh about later with the other guards. Maybe, I said. Definitely, she said. And she smiled. Not an embarrassed smile anymore. A real one. Ending line, I left her on the bench, finishing her ice cream and watching the ducks. And I walked back through the park toward the tube, past the flower beds and the joggers and the families with picnic blankets. And I thought about how we're all just looking for someone to see us. Even the guards. Especially the guards. Standing still for hours, invisible to thousands, waiting for one person to look close enough to realize we're real. And how sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone be wrong and hand them back their phone when they drop it.